I'd like to now introduce Doug Meller.
I'm supposed to talk about Goro and surfing, but I think I should tell you how Goro changed so many people's lives in the DOT. There was a time when I first came to work there, 1994, we had thousands and thousands of these little film strips of all the roads in Hawaii, county and state that qualified for federal funding. And they were celluloid film strips. You play them in a machine which was half the size of this lectern. There were rooms taken up with these film strips. There were books that were this large. They were full of data taken with rubber hoses manually in intervals on roads in Hawaii, plus a few, I guess, permanent stations that intermittently gave continuous data. Goro came in and he digitized and stuck it all on a computer and made it electronic so that in any computer in the state DOT and a bunch of county computers, you can cruise the internet. You can drive any road forward or backwards. You can see a straight ahead picture, a left picture, a right picture. You'll have that data to scale. You'll be able to measure off of it. You'll have the traffic counts at those locations. You'll have a record of what things there are, what bridges. You'll have access to all the construction plans that connect to it. This is all digitized on your computer. Any computer in the DOT can do this. It's an amazing system. It's like you've gone from the Stone Age to, in the course of a decade and a half, to a totally digital electronic system which is easily accessed. It's like the difference of doing your tax returns by pencil and doing it on your a TurboTax. It just, there is no comparison. It's a whole different way of thinking. When I got there, my first association with Goro was he used the phrase data-free analysis to criticize the people who made snap judgments about what should be done or what the policies should be. That was his epithet. He was my source of Hayden mangoes. He was the man who got me interested in orchids and joining orchid societies. And then, as his friends who he used to surf with aged out, he got me on his surfing trips. I'm a boogie boarder. I don't surf. I got tired of patching dings, but I'd reached the point where my friends were starting to age out too. They got themselves in trouble in bigger waves, or they got tired, or they got old, and they just said, no more. And so the time came when it'd be a good north swell and no wind and good conditions, and we'd call each other back and forth the night before and in the morning, and then we'd drive out on Goro's old truck, go out to Mokalea, Daystar, and catch double overhead waves. I got to tell you about Goro's truck. My car would not take his surfboard. I don't have a surfboard rack, so we drive in his truck. His truck has something like 300,000 miles on it. It's black. It's held together by stickers and rust. It looks like a vehicle which is used by an engineer and used by a surfer because it is cluttered with sand and debris and trash and things that you would use like safety helmets if you were going out to a construction site. It's the most awful vehicle. It pumps carbon monoxide straight back into the cockpit. I think the reason Goro surfed is it gave him a sensation that I can only describe as walking on water and flying combined in one. If you look out to sea right out here, you'll see those people catching the waves. They're moving maybe 15 miles an hour as they slide sideways along the face of the wave. If you ran full speed ahead, you would be going 15 miles an hour. And on a bigger wave like the wave on that program, Goro was going 25 miles an hour. And when that wave breaks, the lip of that wave is coming over at 1,000 pounds per square foot. A wave like that could break a board in half if it hit it square as the lip came over if your board was in the wrong position. It was an amazing feeling to surf. It was an amazing feeling for me to boogie board. And Goro, he was religious. He would go out mornings where it was terrible conditions at Diamond Head over a shallow reef just before dawn in order to catch a few waves before he went to work. I reached the point where I wouldn't go out unless conditions are good, but Goro, he was a diehard. He would go every time. On the day before the day he died, we decided to meet out at the groin by Kapahulu, you know, where they have the boogie boarders coming in. Outside that place, there's a break called Kunhas, where it breaks double overhead. And Goro went out there on the day before, and I looked at it and it didn't look that good, so I went somewhere else. The next day, the day where he drowned, that's not probably the right word. We met up at the channel where the Hilton Hawaiian Village catamaran goes out. It's a channel where they moor the Nautilus boat for people, the tourists who want to go undersea. It's a deep water channel. When you go out and you get outside Fort DeRussy, maybe a third of a mile from shore, you're out in deep ocean. There's nothing close. And on the day we went out, it was maybe 10-foot faces, 12-foot faces on the wave. The waves would come maybe every 5 minutes, and in between, the water was still. It was glassy. There was almost no wind. It was perfect conditions. There was almost no one else out. There were like one other boogie boarder and one other surfer. It was just the four of us taking the left slide into the channel. It's a gentle break as big wave breaks go. It's called number fours. When you ride the wave on the inside, there's a channel and the wave just stops breaking. Where we rode the wave going toward Eva, there's a channel on that side. So it's really hard to get into trouble. If you just lie on the water, the wave would wash you into a channel. I got tired after about an hour and a half in the water, and I was going over to tell Goro I'm going to go in. And as I was approaching him, he was sitting on his board. He fell off sideways into the water. And I don't know why. And then I learned something about him that I'd never known before. He doesn't float. Goro's got so much muscle that he doesn't float. He was underwater for a minute and a half. And when I got to him, it was already too late. He'd gotten water into his lungs. I held his head up, but it didn't do any good. I couldn't do CPR because I was on a boogie board. Eventually, we got him onto a glass-bottom boat, got his board on a glass-bottom boat and took him in, but there was nothing we could do. And that was the last I saw of my friend. I couldn't save him. And that was the last I saw of his truck. Lisa asked me to go get it. And that was probably one of the more life-threatening experiences in my life. She found a key. It was really hard, but she had a spare key somewhere hidden in her house. And I went to his truck. I put the key in the handle, and the handle fell off. And then I got in the seat, and the seat back went clunk. So I was essentially balancing on a seat with no seat back. And I turned on the motor, and it started right up and poured smoke and carbon monoxide into the cockpit like it always does. And the windshield, as usual, was covered with dirt and dust and mud. And I somehow navigated the way home, and I was crying and parked it in front of her garage. And that's the last I've seen of that truck. That's my Goro story for you. He was a great guy. He was my source of mangoes, and he was allergic to the sap. He was my introduction to orchids. He was my introduction to big data. When you read the Hawaii papers and you see those comparisons of how rough our roads are to those roads on the mainland, Goro made that happen. That data was not available before. So I'm sorry to say, we won't have them anymore. We won't have these stories anymore. Thank you.
All right, changing up the program a little bit, we're going to have Mark Greiwe come on up.
Hello, everyone. I'd first like to thank Lisa for allowing me to come up here and say a few words about Goro, our friendship, longevity, all the lives he touched back in Indiana. Thank you, Lisa. Goro Saladin Santoso Suliatakusama. That's a big name. He came to Indianapolis in 1976, fifth grade. He didn't go to my school, but everyone knew about him because of his name. But he was much more than a big name. The teachers put it on the spelling quizzes, and everyone learned how to spell it, and it's easy. Easy to pronounce, easy to spell, if you work at it. He was just had an infectious laugh, just met friends so easily. He was loved by coaches, teachers, bosses. He wasn't necessarily the teacher's pet, but he was the boss's pet because nobody could outwork Goro. His work ethic was unbelievable. You know, he was a leader. It was just an amazing network of friends that he developed in Indianapolis growing up with him. I met Goro in 7th grade, 1978. Known him for 43 years, friends. Kind of a little weird way of meeting one of my best friends is just like guys do in 7th grade history class. For some reason, I grabbed Goro by the shirt, shoved him into the wall. He punched me in the stomach, lost my breath. I'm angry. He's furious. The teacher grabs us, pulls us out the hallway, lectured us, no paddling, no principal trip, because they, used the paddle back then, right? So, and then after class, a bunch of guys came up to me, "Are you fighting Goro after school?" I'm like, "I don't know. Am I supposed to?" It's like, "Don't." "He'll destroy you." And I go, "Little Goro?" "Yes, little Goro." And I soon found out, body by Goro, yeah, he did go to the gym in high school. He could bench over 300 pounds. Probably would have won the state record at bench press if he could have got through the squats, but he couldn't. Started too heavy weight. But he, push-ups, sit-ups, whatever, body by Goro, martial arts, lifting weights, he was just so fit. But, kind of a really funny story there on how we met. And there was no fight. Our friendship grew. He just touched so many lives through, middle school and through high school. He would keep beer in a trash bag in Fall Creek River so it'd keep it cold and keep it hidden from parents. So pretty smart little things to do. Just so many great stories. And then, it's summer before our senior year in 1987, Goro did something amazing. He hand-stitched this. There were several of his friends. He hand-stitched this. He wrote us a heartfelt letter about what this symbolized to Goro and what we meant to him as friends. And who does that at 17? He's an amazing man. I don't know, I wasn't really Rambo, but Goro had some big arms, and Andy did too, still does. Took pictures. Our mom sewed these on our shirts, black shirts, cut the sleeves off. We thought we were cool. Goro had M60 machine gun shells, empty shells. They were like a long sleeve of shells. They were empty. Wraps them around his biceps, so did Andy. And actually went to school like that. Took some pictures in the woods thinking we're Rambo and cool 17, 18-year-olds. And Goro actually wore them around his arms to school. And I don't think you can do that today, but we weren't really a gang. We were honor students and athletes, and we just had fun. And I know Goro scared a lot of freshmen, but didn't touch any of them. Then Goro and I went off to Purdue, and several of us did. Dave and Andy are here today with us. They went to Purdue too. Goro is my freshman roommate. he just, again, his personality, it was just his infectious laugh. He put others first, his generosity. He was such a kind friend, smart, witty, everything that you guys know about him. Some other things that people learned about Goro is he's no one to mess with, no matter his small stature. You saw a picture in the video of Goro's tail that he had as a freshman at Purdue. That was back when we wore mullets and did perms and grew hair back long in the back. There was this 300-pound guy on our dorm that would make fun of his tail and harass him and kind of bully him and all this. And one elevator ride back up at the dorm, all of his friends are in there, and big mistake. Like, the big guy was messing with Goro again. It was like a mountain lion, just in a split second, had him pinned against the wall, fist cocked, Goro's muscles are shaking. You could hear a pin drop. No punches thrown, no words said. It was probably 5 seconds, and it was just like, it was crazy. It was slow motion. It's like, wow. And then that guy never messed with Goro again, and Goro was always respected, and all of his friends, we still cherish this friendship, and probably a little bit of respectful fear, not to piss him off. So, and I joined a fraternity, and then Goro lived with Andy for 2 years, sophomore and junior year, and developed a really strong friendship, and we still stayed in touch, and Goro was really serious about his studies and having fun and living life to the fullest. Then Dave Subalo, who's with us too, Dave and Goro and I and a friend Dennis, we lived together senior year, and Goro was just a lot of fun. He was brave, fearless, risk taker, and so we're having a big party at our apartment, and Goro's in the kitchen. We've got this big opening between the kitchen and the fan room, so Goro thought it'd be fun to run through the kitchen, dive head first to the opening, over the couch, land, and roll. And if Goro wanted to do it, he did it. And so with our beer fog judgment, most of us did the same thing, and most of us didn't land as graceful as Goro did. And I was a chicken. I did not do it. Maybe I was the smart one, I don't know. But that was Goro. One day he said, I want to do a backflip. He just did a backflip. No training, no one showed him anything. He just whatever he wanted to do, he could do. He was determined. No quit in Goro. Stupid human tricks for fun. When we graduated from Purdue, Goro said he only wanted to live in California and Hawaii. Just melting pot of cultures, fun, better weather, just live life to the fullest. I was so happy he was able to make it to Hawaii, and so glad that he was able to meet Lisa and have Lisa and his family in his life. My wife and I came out here 13 years ago. I assume I met some of you. Lisa and Goro had a luau. The old truck, we remember it. My kids were young. They had to sit in the back in the jump seats. He put chase lounge lawn chairs. He bungee corded in the back of the truck so my wife and I would be safe in that truck. And so my kids were so jealous. They wanted to ride in the back of the truck, and we're like, no. So we just came back here in August and had a family vacation, and we're with my wife's sister and her family and my kids, and and we were ready to have another great visit with Lisa and Goro, and I was telling a story for like hours in the hot tub to Michelle's family about what a great man he was, and everyone was so excited to get him. And I texted Goro, do you still have that old truck? He goes, yeah, I still have that old truck. And my son and his fiance wanted to ride in the lawn chairs in the back. It never happened. Unfortunately, we got that heartfelt phone call from Lisa. And we were just all in shock. And we came over and saw Lisa, and we spent 3 days here in Oahu just trying to remember him and just trying to stay strong. And it was... Goro meant so much to us. I didn't sleep that night. I just got on the phone and started calling everyone that Goro knew, all the lives that he touched back in Indiana, and he was such an amazing man. And shortly after that, we had a Zoom call where everyone just remembered him and talked about him, and Lisa was strong enough to attend. I told myself I wasn't going to cry because I know Goro's laughing at me right now. When I would do something stupid, he'd giggle at me and point, and forced me to try to be better, tougher, stronger, like him. But Mark Sharp's here today with his wife Lori, and he touched everyone's lives. And Mark had some great stories. Mark was about the same daredevil level as Goro. He was a pole vaulter, so who does that, right? So, but they would bumper slide after wrestling practice on cars, police cars too. Doesn't matter until they turn the lights on. They were biking. You can see Mark and Goro in a picture there on a long road trip. We'd go camping, and we would drive the car, and Mark and Goro would ride the bike 60 miles, bodied by Goro. And then Mark's story, they were boating and pulling a tube. And what good friends do is when you're pulling your friend in a tube, you drive the boat real fast, go in figure eights, go in circles. You need a big wake, and you need to launch your friend. So I wasn't there, but Mark said Goro was holding onto that tube like a spider monkey. It was going upside down, flipping all over. Impossible to stay on. Goro stayed on. It's all his muscles, all his strength, and they failed. They couldn't fling him through the air. So so many more stories. I don't want to take too much time, but what an amazing man. What a footprint he left on our lives. He'll never be forgotten, and we're all better people for having Goro in our life. And he's motivation for me to just be the best person I can be. Thank you. Bonsai, Goro.
Yes, Goro lived life to the fullest. What a man. Incredible. So let's do a bonsai chant. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Bonsai! 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 Our last speaker is John Casey, who needs no further introduction. Thanks.
Well, aloha nui loa to you all. I know probably about half of you in this room, and it was my great pleasure and privilege to be one of Goro's very first friends here in Hawaii, because when he first moved here, he shared a group house with me and a couple of other friends, and so I've known him for a long, long time, and I may be wrong, but I think that I was actually indirectly responsible for him meeting Lisa. Because I was dating Samantha Tavares at the time, who was renting a room in the house that Lisa had a lease on. And so it came to be Halloween, and the two girls just showed up at our door. And I think that Samantha was probably in an Afro-Cuban dance outfit. That would be her typical style. And Lisa was there as a cowgirl with her six-shooters and her cowgirl hat, and I remember Goro just kind of coming down the stairs and just stopping halfway and checking it out. So anyway, that's my little feeling of introduction with Goro. My earliest memories of Goro were actually at the house. He didn't always have to go into work early. I was in graduate school at University of Hawaii at the time. And so sometimes we would just relax with a pot of coffee brewed Indonesian style. And so you grind the grounds, the Turkish ground, very, very fine ground, pour in the water, and you don't filter anything. You just keep drinking until the cups get very sludgy. How far do you want to go? And that's how we got acquainted. Goro and I had many adventures together. I really enjoyed the slide presentation, the video there. Thank you very much for those of you that had any part in doing that. I was there at several of those scenes. I can remember times in Kalalau. Certainly the Eclipse expedition, actually 2 Eclipse expeditions, the one on the Big Island in 1991, and then in Wyoming in 2017, and Goro was one of the chief organizers of that thing, and as soon as that eclipse was over, he was saying, what about 2024? The next time a solar eclipse is coming across North America. So we were already talking about watching it in Mazatlan, April 8th, 2024, for those of you that are interested in joining us on that one. In any case, Goro and I had a splendid relationship over the years, and I'm very grateful to Goro and Lisa for being my most prominent hosts on my frequent visits here to Oahu. been living in California, Southern California for the last 25 years because some of us have to work, and that's where the work was for my teaching work. I am considering coming back, though. It's always nice to come back into the warm, as it were. But in any case, every time that I would come out here, Goro and Lisa would host me at their house for up to a month at a time. And of course, Goro was religious, not about religion, but about surfing. And he would take me out 3 or 4 days a week at Diamond Head. Not exactly my favorite surf spot, but you know, it's a rounded point. So there's, no matter what direction the swell's coming, there's always something going on at Diamond Head. On the other hand, several times we would go to more interesting places, including the areas off of Waikiki. And just to segue with some of the stories that have already been told, the idea that the lip coming over being powerful enough to break a board in half, yes, I was using his board and a lip came over and broke the board in half. I felt very badly about that. But he said, don't worry, it already broke in half once before. It was repaired, so that made me feel a lot better. In any case, Goro also had a shared interest with me in astronomy and cosmology, and so I can still remember going over to a open house for the UH's Institute of Astronomy in Manoa, and I still have the T-shirt, wearing it thin. But in any case, a couple of times we went up to the North Shore to surf at a place called Lani Akea. And for those of you that don't know, it means the expansive heavens. And of course, since the big telescopes on the Big Island are under the care and maintenance that very much involves the astronomy department at UH, when they had a few years ago assembled enough data to start getting an idea of the topography of the universe as a whole, as far as we've been able to see it, they ended up expanding by far our notion of just how extensive this 13.78 billion year universe is. And what did they name it? Well, since they were the ones that collated all the information, they got to name it, and so they named it Lani Akea, the expansive heavens. So that was really kind of cool. In any case, some of you here are probably old enough to remember a TV series that was on during my childhood called Ben Casey. And I can't tell you how many times people would come up to me at school and say, "Are you related?" I go, "Yeah, sure, he's my uncle." You know, and of course, this was just a little joke, but it's a segue into what I would like to present as my contribution to this this remembrance. And at the beginning, in the beginning credits of that program, there was this senior doctor there called Dr. Zorba, I believe, and he had this wild hair. Mine is tucked back so that I don't scare anybody here, but he would start out, you know, it was a teaching hospital, and he would do symbols on the chalkboard, and he'd go, man, woman, birth, death, infinity. And it was really quite a cosmic beginning of a show, but of course, you know, when you're in the hospital, you're dealing with all of those things. And so from the man and woman part, I just want to acknowledge the great emotional weight, spiritual weight that his partner, Lisa, bears to this day. And Lisa, I do give you my firm wish that your heart heal soon. Thank you. And of course, Ashley, Lisa's daughter, gave birth a few years ago to Cannon, and so birth continues on. And of course, we're used to celebrating birth. We're used to celebrating the love of man and woman. And even though we know from a very early age that all of us, once we're born, also bear the sentence of mortality, it seems that we're very rarely equipped for it when it actually comes. And of course, this is doubly compounded when death comes in an untimely way. I've joked to people that, damn it, Goro, you jumped the line. You know, because most of his friends are quite a bit older than he, and it was just a shocking thing. I found out about it when I got a text message from Sally Clem, who just said, "Call me, we need to talk." Now, people rarely do that when they've got really good news to share, and I had just finished videotaping some yoga philosophy lectures for a group in London, and so I was talking about mortality, different views about the nature of existence and what happens after we shed this mortal coil, as the saying goes. And so it was really poignant for me to be getting that word after 11 hours of production and just kind of go, dang, wow, how to encompass all of that. So we have a large group here, and I think that's a mark of Goro's magnetism, his goodness, and his really enjoyable company, that he's attracted such a marvelous group of people to celebrate his life. And of course, this is a mixed celebration. It's bittersweet. Yes, we have humorous stories. We have wonderful ideas about honoring his memory, but it is bittersweet because we are also faced with the loss of a dear friend who leaves a hole in our ohana, something that we are all over a period of time are going to have to knit together to bring back wholeness. And this can be and must be done. Now, I'm assuming in a group this large that people here have a variety of different religious orientations, different ideas about life, death, immortality, life after death, whatever. And I'm certainly not here to persuade anyone in one direction or another. A handful of my close friends who have passed away, I engage in a 49-day vigil for the person after the style of the Tibetan Buddhists, who feel that there's a 49-day period between death and rebirth. And it's a very interesting practice because it's not praying for the soul of anybody, but rather it is establishing a daily communication with that individual, with that continuity of consciousness, especially in the first couple of weeks, because it is figured in that tradition that, yeah, it's during that first week and a little bit during the second week that there's an opportunity to actually come to a place of complete awakening or enlightenment in the bardo, in the in-between. And so for my own self, being separated by 2,500 miles from all of my friends here, I had very few people that I could talk to about this. And so, well, I guess I just had to talk to Goro. And so I was talking to Goro all day long, off and on, and I would hear echoes of his voice, in my own head saying, JC, what's going on? I say, hey, I'll tell you what's going on. But anyway, it was a wonderful thing, and I talked to Lisa towards the end of that and said, yeah, I'm going to do a little ceremony to wrap this up for myself. And she goes, oh, I want to take part in that too. And so we organized a small group and laid out a Buddhist mandala, as it were, and we made wishes for him, regardless of what his condition is, and wishing that if he is to be reborn in some earthly form, that it would be, a rebirth that would have strength and beauty, kindness and wisdom. And so that was our wish for him. Now, for those of you that kind of feel like, well, no, he's going to be kind of approaching the pearly gates, and St. Peter might have a few questions for him, but I'm firmly convinced that a creator God who would have an interest in his children and would be in a position of evaluating or judging them would be less a matter of their formal behavior in church, but rather about the quality of their character, and how they treat their family, their loved ones, and all human beings. And in that regard, I think that Goro was an exemplary character. He did share for me a little bit of roughhousing when he was younger, but certainly in the time that I know him, he was always a really fabulous guy, really friendly, could be serious when seriousness was required, but would much rather be laughing than crying, and I really appreciated that about him. When we would go down to Diamond Head to go surfing, and I really did enjoy that because I'd always return to California in much better physical condition than when I came out. And so we would tend to be the sunrise patrol, not the dawn patrol. We would rarely get out actually before sunrise, although I have to say that one time we were out there at sunrise with our late friend John Cater, and we were there before sunrise. And it was an exceptionally clear day. We could see not only Molokai, but we could also see the West Maui Mountains. And so we all just kind of turned around just to watch the sun come up because we could see the brightening of the slope of the West Maui Mountains. And I'll be darned if we didn't see a green flash at sunrise. First and only time I've ever seen that. So that was really a very memorable thing. But when we would get there, the people that would be on patrol, some of them would already be done with surfing, and they'd be walking up the way while we were walking down. And so we would frequently say, "So, how is it today?" And one of these times, there was a young lady that was walking up, and we said, "So, how's the surf today?" She goes, "Well, any water day is better than a no water day." And that became one of our anthems. Any water day is better than a no water day. On the other hand, his last water day, I think, was a little bit mixed. I think the first half of it really was a wonderful day, and unfortunately, the second half, not so much. But these things happen. It's, some people would say, well, at least he died what he enjoyed doing most, and since he slipped underwater unconscious, there was not a struggle and a painful death, and that's, I remember as a Catholic boy, we had prayers for a happy death. So I don't want to say that this is a consolation, but it is something for him. And we now lack his physical presence, but it doesn't mean he's entirely gone. And as long as he is living in our memories and in our heart, he is still with us. And I, shortly before coming over here, I noted that the Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh passed away. And being in Buddhist circles and yoga circles myself, of course I got various kinds of texts, and I wanted to read one of them here because I think that we can actually apply this to kind of a feeling for Goro as well. So in his book, At Home in the World, published in 2016, Thich Nhat Hanh addressed his inevitable death, and he wrote this: "This body of mine will disintegrate, but my actions will continue me. If you think I am only this body, then you have not truly seen me. When you look at my friends, you see my continuation. When you see someone walking with mindfulness and compassion, you know he is my continuation. I don't see why we have to say I will die, because I can already see myself in you, in other people, and in future generations. Even when the cloud is not there, it continues as snow or rain. It is impossible for the cloud to die. It can become rain or ice, but it cannot become nothing. The cloud does not need to have a soul in order to continue. There's no beginning and no end. I will never die. There will be a dissolution of this body, but that does not mean my death. I will continue, always." And so when you see people, yes, the kindness and compassion, but I would say also the humor and the liveliness. And when you see that in your friends and you share stories that all of us have of our good times with Goro and Lisa, with small groups, with large groups, with coworkers, with friends, and just strangers that are met on the street, you are seeing his continuation if you choose to do so. Now, since I'm the last of these scheduled speakers, I wanted to actually create a bookend with Sally Clem's lovely Hawaiian invocation. Oh, I don't know all those fancy Hawaiian words. I'm just an Indic scholar, but I got an easy one. Om, that's a really good one. So what I would like to do to make kind of a nice ending that corresponds nicely with the beginning here is that I've got this Tibetan singing bowl. I'm going to strike this 3 times, and I invite all of you to just close your eyes and for 1 minute just tune in once again. Bring in a sense of unity with the spirit of Mr. Goro Sulio Autakuzumo. And before I do that, I should mention that, the Indonesian word Goro means companion, and Goro was an excellent companion. Sulio Autakuzumo means lovely, auspicious, primordial flower. And so he was a son of that lineage, and I think that that's a nice way to think about it as well. So I'm going to do this, and at the end of this 1 minute, I'm just going to chant Om 3 times in my own style. You're welcome to join or not as you please. And then I'll ring this bowl 1 more time to just kind of complete my participation in this event. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here. So let's sit up and get concentrated internally, and let's try this out just for a minute or two. Thank you all for suiting up and showing up.